Hot coffee hit my chest before I even understood what was happening. The cup left Adrian Blackwell's hand like he was making a point in a board presentation. It struck my collarbone, burst across my blouse, and the burn came a second later, sharp, humiliating, public. Steam rose between us like proof. For missing one pump of vanilla, I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Adrian Blackwell, CEO of the company I had helped operationally stabilize for 15 years, smiled like he'd just delivered a masterclass. If you can't handle coffee, you can't handle leadership. His girlfriend, perched on the edge of a desk she didn't work at, rolled her eyes. Around us, 40 employees froze, laptops open, emails mid-sentence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The silence felt rehearsed. The hot coffee made my skin flush, but it's actually very cold outside. I don't know what the temperature is where you live right now. If you're still listening, please let me know your lucky number. My name is Erica Lewis. I'm the Director of Operations. I built the internal systems that keep this company compliant, profitable, and boring in all the ways investors love. I manage risk, workflow, crisis mitigation. Apparently now I manage beverages. The burn spread under my skin, but I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. That wasn't discipline, I said quietly. That was assault. A few people looked down. A few looked terrified. Adrian's expression flickered just for a second, then hardened again. He believed this was a lesson, a demonstration of authority, a reminder of hierarchy. He had no idea hierarchy was about to rearrange itself. Through the glass wall of the conference room, past the stunned faces and the dripping coffee on the carpet, I saw movement. A man in a tailored navy suit stood very still. Not HR, not staff, a board member. Arrived early. And watching everything. Before we continue, I want to share a small note. This story is partially fictionalized and uses artificial intelligence to help clarify ideas and create a deeper emotional impact. I hope it resonates with you, and if it doesn't, feel free to step away, get some rest, and take care of yourself. Your health matters more than any story. By the time I reached urgent care, the pain had settled into something sharp and methodical. The nurse said second-degree burns and photographed my collarbone and wrist from 3 angles. She documented temperature exposure, surface area, estimated healing time. I asked for copies of everything: images, physician notes, discharge summary. Not because I was emotional, because I was precise. Back in my car, I created a folder labeled Incident. I uploaded the files to 3 platforms, saved them on 2 devices, and forwarded everything to my personal email. Then I called a lawyer. Calmly, no drama, just facts. Adrian texted that evening. We can resolve this privately. I read it twice before replying. You already resolved it publicly. He didn't respond after that. The next morning, I emailed HR requesting preservation of all security footage from the conference floor between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. I CC'd my attorney. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply requested retention under legal protocol. Words matter. Tone matters more. IT replied within an hour. Cameras covered the hallway and the glass-walled conference room. Audio included. Audio. I asked for confirmation in writing. They confirmed. Later that afternoon, my lawyer called me back. Her voice was measured, almost impressed. The recording captured him before he threw it. She said, I closed my eyes, already knowing. What did he say? She paused. He said, watch this. That was the moment I stopped being the employee he humiliated and became the problem he couldn't control. Anger is loud. Control is quieter and far more dangerous. 2 days after the incident, an internal clip began circulating through company email threads and private Slack channels. It was labeled Security Review, Conference Floor. I opened it once. In the edited version, the angle was tight. The audio stripped. It looked like I stepped forward, bumped Adrian's arm, and the coffee accidentally splashed onto me. Clean, convenient, almost believable. By noon, Adrian had called an all-hands meeting. He stood at the front of the room with the composure of a man who believed he had fixed the narrative. "Misunderstandings happen," he said smoothly. "Let's not destroy careers over an unfortunate spill." A few heads nodded. Some avoided looking at me. I felt the heat rise in my chest again, not from the burn, but from the insult. Still, I didn't speak. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. Because arguing would make it emotional instead. I forwarded the clip to my attorney with one line: "This is not the full footage." Within an hour, she issued a formal preservation demand under federal evidence retention standards. It was polite, specific, and legally binding. It required the company to secure all original recordings, metadata logs, and access records related to the incident. Documentation beats outrage. Late that afternoon, IT responded to legal CCing my attorney by mistake. They confirmed that the original unedited footage was intact. Audio included. Time-stamped. Then came the line that shifted everything. The access log showed the raw file had been retrieved the night before. By Adrian Blackwell's credentials. I read that sentence 3 times. He hadn't just defended himself. He had tried to rewrite reality. Controlled anger is not explosive. It's strategic. And now I had proof he wasn't cleaning up a misunderstanding. He was laundering a reputation. Justice rarely arrives with sirens. It assembles itself quietly. 3 days after the edited video fiasco, my attorney received 2 emails from former employees. Both women had left the company within the last year. Both used personal accounts. Both wrote carefully, like people who had practiced silence for a long time. The first described Adrian throwing a tablet across a conference table when a pitch deck had a typo. He said I embarrassed him. She wrote, "Then he told me women in operations were support staff, not strategy." The second attached a photo of a cracked office mug and a bruise on her wrist. "He didn't hit me," she clarified. "He threw it past me, close enough." Insults, intimidation, object throwing, public humiliation, not random, not isolated. I didn't dramatize their stories. I didn't give interviews or post statements. I organized timestamps, cross-referenced employment dates, documented witness names, and added everything to the growing file my attorney and I were building. Patterns matter more than outrage. When we met that afternoon, she reviewed the statements slowly, nodding. "This isn't an incident," she said. "It's a behavioral model." That sentence settled something inside me. Adrian hadn't lost control that day. He had followed a script he'd rehearsed for years. We submitted the statements as supplemental evidence. The board's legal counsel requested copies. HR's tone shifted noticeably from defensive to cautious, and then something unexpected happened. I received a direct message from Adrian's girlfriend. "I need to talk," she wrote. We met in a neutral cafe downtown. She looked tired, not glamorous, not smug. "He told me it was an accident," she said quietly. "He said you bumped him." I held her gaze. "He didn't." She swallowed. "I found texts on his phone," she continued. "He told someone. She'll learn her place today." Justice wasn't abstract anymore. It was beginning to take shape. When Adrian's girlfriend asked to meet again, I expected hesitation. What I got instead was resolve. She slid her phone across the cafe table without a word. The screen was already open. A message thread, Adrian's name at the top. "Complain about the drink. I'll make an example." The timestamp was 10 minutes before the coffee hit my chest. I read it once. Then again. My pulse didn't spike. It slowed. This wasn't negligence. It wasn't temper. It was choreography. "You didn't know I asked." She shook her head. "He said you were disrespectful, that he had to assert authority." Authority. Interesting word for assault. She forwarded the screenshots to my attorney while I watched. No hesitation this time. No glamour. Just quiet realizations settling in. The moment that text became evidence, the narrative shifted from incident to intent. Intent is expensive in court. Adrian must have sensed the ground moving under him, because 2 days later, she called me again, voice tight, almost whispering, He wants me to sign something. An NDA, drafted quickly. Broad language. Permanent confidentiality. Financial incentive included. He said it protects both of us. She told me. Does it? I asked. She exhaled. It protects him. That same afternoon, Adrian tried contacting me through counsel. A proposed settlement. Generous compensation. Mutual non-disparagement. Confidentiality for the stability of the company. I declined without theatrics. If accountability is confidential, it's not accountability. My attorney replied on my behalf. But the real shift came the following morning. She called again. I recorded him. There was no drama in her voice now. Just clarity. She had confronted him the night before. Asked directly about the coffee, about the message. He didn't deny it, instead. He laughed. She'll learn her place today. He had said earlier that morning to someone on the phone. Just watch. She played the audio for me. His voice was unmistakable, confident, certain, enjoying the setup. It wasn't rage. It was premeditation. That recording changed everything, because now it wasn't my word against his. It wasn't about perception or perspective. It was about a CEO deliberately orchestrating humiliation and harm. When she submitted the audio to my attorney, she didn't look like his girlfriend anymore. She looked like a witness. And Adrian Blackwell, for the first time since this began, wasn't controlling the room. He was losing it. Scandals burn fast. Audits burn slow. After the recording surfaced, the board stopped reacting emotionally and started reacting financially. That's when things became dangerous for Adrian. Assault is messy. Fraud is measurable. An independent forensic accounting firm was hired within a week. Quietly, no internal announcement, no dramatic email blast, just calendar holds labeled Executive Expense Review. I wasn't asked to lead it. I didn't need to be. I had built the reporting systems years earlier, automated approval workflows, digital receipts, layered authorization thresholds. Systems don't take sides. They just remember. The preliminary findings arrived in a sealed packet during a special board session. Personal travel coded as client development. Luxury hotel weekends billed to non-existent prospects. Entertainment reimbursements without corresponding contracts. Executive retention bonuses issued outside compensation committee approval. None of it explosive on its own. Together, it formed a pattern. Adrian stormed into the conference room mid-session. He hadn't been invited. "This is character assassination," he shouted. "You're digging through routine executive spending because of a personal vendetta." No one raised their voice in response. One board member adjusted his glasses and said evenly, "We're reviewing numbers." Adrian, numbers don't have vendettas. That was the difference. My case had begun with heat and humiliation. This one was spreadsheets and timestamps. I watched from the far end of the table. Not speaking. There was nothing for me to add. The system I built was doing the talking. By the end of the week, external counsel had been looped in. Insurance carriers were notified. As required under executive liability policies, that notification triggered its own review. 2 days later, the company received a formal letter. If allegations of intentional misconduct or financial fraud were substantiated, coverage for Adrian Blackwell would be limited or denied under the policy's exclusions clause. Translation: if fraud sticks, he pays for his own defense. For the first time since this began, I saw calculation flicker across his face instead of anger, because outrage can be managed. But uninsured liability, that's personal. If you believe letting the independent audit run its course without shouting, without interfering was the right move, drop a 1 in the comments. Because when you speak up, you remind people that accountability should never be optional. The insurance carrier's response arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. Executive liability coverage for Adrian Blackwell would be suspended pending the outcome of the fraud review. If intentional misconduct was confirmed, the policy exclusion clause would apply retroactively. In plain English, he was on his own. By afternoon, word had spread through leadership. His temporary asset freeze followed quickly, triggered by a court order tied to the civil suit and the ongoing financial investigation. Nothing dramatic, just quiet notifications from banks and compliance officers. Transactions flagged, accounts restricted, reviews initiated. Adrian called an emergency meeting with the board. His voice, once polished and commanding, carried strain. "This is disproportionate," he insisted. "You're destroying the company over allegations." No one answered immediately. Later that evening, my attorney forwarded a proposal, a substantial settlement, more money than I had expected. In exchange, a permanent NDA, non-disparagement, and an agreement to withdraw further claims. He wanted silence. I read the document slowly, feeling the weight of it. The pressure was real. Legal battles are expensive. Public scrutiny is exhausting. There's always a moment where taking the money seems easier, but easier isn't always right. I dictated my response. Add accountability, remove silence, then we talk. My attorney sent it exactly as written. The next day, Adrian's counsel requested mediation in good faith. I declined, not theatrically, just firmly, by then. Something else had shifted. My attorney called late that afternoon. "The district attorney's office has requested copies of the audio and financial summaries," she said. "They're evaluating potential criminal exposure." I sat very still. Civil liability is negotiable. Criminal prosecution isn't. The air felt thinner after that. For the first time since this began, Adrian wasn't fighting to control a narrative. He was fighting to avoid indictment. Courtrooms don't care about volume. They care about clarity. The original security footage was admitted without objection. No edits, no cropped angles, full audio. When the screen lit up, I felt the room shift, not emotionally, but legally. This was no longer about perception. It was about record. The video played from the moment Adrian entered the conference floor. The camera angle was wide. You could see the entire interaction. You could see him step back. You could see his arm draw deliberately behind him. You could see the coffee arc forward, and then the audio. Clear, undistorted. "Watch this." The words landed in the courtroom, heavier than the cup had landed on me. There was no gasp, no theatrics, just silence as the footage continued, my body recoiling. The spill spreading across my blouse. The stunned employees frozen in place. Adrian's attorney stood slowly when it ended. "Ms. Lewis," he began, pacing lightly. "If the workplace environment had been so intolerable, why didn't you simply resign?" There it was. The old logic. Leave quietly, absorb the damage, disappear. I folded my hands in front of me and answered evenly. Why didn't he just act like a CEO? A few heads turned. The judge didn't interrupt. The attorney tried again. "Isn't it possible emotions were running high?" "Yes," I replied. The courtroom air felt different after that. Not charged, decisive. My attorney walked the jury through the elements: intent, action, harm, the medical documentation, the audio, the pattern of prior behavior, the attempted video manipulation, the financial misconduct establishing motive and character. No dramatics, just sequence. When closing arguments ended, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. We stood as they re-entered. The foreperson read the verdict clearly. On the claim of assault and battery liable, intentional. The word hung in the air. Intentional. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I exhaled. The explosion wasn't emotional. It was structural, because from that moment forward, everything else, civil damages, insurance denial, potential criminal exposure, became inevitable. And inevitability is louder than outrage. Consequences rarely arrive all at once. They unfold in layers. The board removed Adrian Blackwell as CEO within 48 hours of the verdict. The announcement was clinical, almost polite. Leadership transition, effective immediately. No mention of coffee, no mention of assault, just governance language doing what governance does best, cutting cleanly. Civil damages followed. The court ordered substantial compensation, calculated from medical costs, lost wages, emotional distress, and punitive factors tied to intent. His legal team requested a stay. It was denied. Enforcement began. Then the asset freeze expanded, because the fraud investigation hadn't paused for the civil trial. Subpoenas moved. Financial records were cross-checked. Expense trails widened. The same accounting firm that reviewed executive spending delivered a formal report to regulators. Questionable reimbursements, improper bonuses, mischaracterized travel. Insurance officially declined coverage under the misconduct exclusion. Defense costs shifted entirely to him. Within weeks, his downtown condo was listed well below market value. Motivated seller. The car lease terminated early. The club memberships quietly expired. Reputation doesn't collapse dramatically. It erodes publicly and permanently. Media outlets picked up the story once the fraud review became official. Headlines don't use adjectives like misunderstanding. They use words like intentional and embezzlement. Adrian sent me a letter, 2 pages. Formal tone, regret, miscommunication, unintended consequences. I didn't open it fully. I didn't need closure. The court record was enough. By then, my scars had faded from red to pale. The pain had left. The structure remained. A week after the condo listing went live, the board requested a private meeting with me, not HR, not legal. The board. They thanked me for professional restraint and systemic clarity. They acknowledged that the policies in place had not been strong enough. Then one of them leaned forward. "We need leadership that understands compliance and culture," he said. "We'd like you to step into a new executive role." Justice didn't feel triumphant. It felt orderly, and order, after chaos, is its own kind of victory. Rebuilding is quieter than revenge. When the board officially appointed me Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer, there was no applause, no dramatic announcement, just a revised org chart and a new line under my name. It felt less like a promotion and more like responsibility finally catching up with reality. I didn't inherit an empire. I inherited a vulnerability. So I built what should have existed long before that cup left his hand. First, a zero-tolerance policy for workplace violence, clear definitions, automatic suspension protocols, no executive exemptions, no more misunderstandings. Second, an independent reporting hotline routed to a third-party firm, not internal HR, anonymous, protected, logged, documented. Third, formal whistleblower safeguards, written guarantees against retaliation. With board-level oversight, policies are not emotional, they are structural. At the next all-hands meeting, I stood where Adrian once had. Same stage, different tone. I didn't raise my voice. This company runs on accountability. I said, not intimidation. Then I added the line that no one would forget. Coffee cools down. Consequences don't. There was no nervous laughter this time, no frozen silence. People held eye contact. Later that afternoon, security escorted Adrian through the lobby to collect the last of his belongings from storage. A single cardboard box, framed certificates, a nameplate that no longer meant anything. No one gathered, no one whispered, no one watched. Power had moved on. As I returned to my office, my inbox refreshed. One new message from an intern in the marketing department. I was about to stay silent. It read, "Not anymore." I stared at that sentence longer than I had stared at any court document. That was the real verdict. Not the damages, not the title, not the headlines. A system had changed, and this time, it would outlive him. There's something people don't tell you about standing up for yourself. It's rarely loud. And it's almost never glamorous. It's paperwork. It's documentation. It's choosing not to delete the message that scares you. It's sending one more email when your hands are shaking. What I learned wasn't just that justice exists, it's that justice favors the prepared. The burn healed. What stayed with me was the moment I decided not to shrink, not to laugh it off, not to resign quietly. That decision didn't just protect me, it changed the system around me. And systems only change when someone refuses to accept that's just how it is. If you were in that room, what would you have done? Would you have looked down at your keyboard? Would you have told yourself it wasn't your place? Or would you have documented, spoken up, and trusted that truth has weight? I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Because no matter the city, the office, or the industry, This story isn't really about coffee, it's about power, silence, and the moment you choose which side you're on. If this story meant something to you, don't just watch it, move it forward. One subscription from you helps this message reach someone who feels trapped. One like tells the algorithm this conversation matters. One share might land in front of the exact person who needs the courage to document, to speak, to act. You're not just supporting a channel, you're helping rewrite what people think they have to tolerate at work. And that makes you part of the change. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.